Welcome to the Haunted Hour Club, where the shadows come alive and the unknown awaits. Tonight, we dive into a tale that will send shivers down your spine and keep you on the edge of your seat. Turn off the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for a journey into the eerie and unexplained. Let the haunting begin. In the mountains of Jalisco, far from the bustling cities and tourist paths, there is a village few dare to speak of. Its name is San Nicolas Perdido, and those who visit often disappear. According to legend, the village is cursed, a trap for the unwary, and its residents aren't entirely human. The story begins with a man named Martin, a truck driver, who lived for adventure and was always willing to take the riskiest jobs. Martin had taken a contract to deliver supplies to a mining operation deep in the Sierra Madre. It was a dangerous route, narrow dirt roads that twisted through the cliffs with the threat of landslides and bandits. But Martin wasn't afraid. The paycheck was worth the risk. The foreman gave him clear directions. Follow the main road no matter what. Do not stop and do not take any shortcuts. If you come across a village, turn around immediately. You'll know it when you see it. Martin laughed. What's so bad about a village? Bandits? The foreman's expression turned grim. No, worse. The journey began smoothly. Martin's truck roared along the dirt road as the mountains loomed around him. The forest grew denser, the shadows longer, and the air heavier. Just as night fell, Martin's GPS cut out. The screen flickered and went black. Typical, he muttered, pulling out the printed map. But when he looked at the road ahead, he noticed something strange, a fork that wasn't marked on the map. One path was wide and clear, but the other was a narrow trail that descended into the forest. A wooden sign stood at the fork, though it was so worn that the words were illegible. Against his better judgment, Martin took the narrow trail. The trail wound deeper into the forest, and the darkness became suffocating. After what felt like hours, Martin saw lights flickering through the trees. Relieved, he thought it might be a small village where he could ask for directions or spend the night. The village was quiet as he entered. Cobblestone streets glistened in the moonlight, and the houses were made of old adobe, their windows glowing faintly with candlelight. Oddly, there were no cars, no sounds of televisions or radios, just an eerie stillness. As Martin stepped out of his truck, a woman appeared from the shadows. She was beautiful, with long black hair and pale skin, dressed in a simple white gown. "Welcome," she said softly, her voice soothing. "You look tired. Come, we have food and shelter for travelers." Martin hesitated. Something about her smile didn't feel right, but exhaustion won over caution. The woman led Martin to the village square, where a long table was set up with steaming dishes of food, pozole, tamales, roasted meat, and more. Other villagers began to emerge, their faces warm and welcoming, though their eyes seemed a bit too bright, their smiles too wide. They encouraged Martin to eat, pouring him a cup of pulque and filling his plate. At first he resisted, but hunger overcame him. The food was delicious, and the pulque was the best he'd ever tasted. As the night wore on, Martin noticed something strange. The villagers never ate. They simply watched him, their smiles frozen in place. "Why aren't you eating?" he asked nervously. "We're not hungry," the woman replied. "We're just happy to have a guest." After the meal, the woman offered Martin a room in one of the houses. As she led him there, she whispered, "Do not leave your room tonight, no matter what you hear." Martin's unease grew. "Why? What happens at night?" She only smiled and said, "You'll be safe as long as you stay inside." Once Martin was alone, he locked the door and sat on the bed, his mind racing. The house was old, with creaking wooden floors and cracked walls. Outside, the village was silent. But as midnight approached, the silence broke. It started with faint whispers, as if dozens of voices were speaking just outside his window. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling the house. Martin peeked through the curtains and froze. The villagers were gathered in the square, their bodies convulsing unnaturally. Their shadows twisted and grew, merging into monstrous shapes. Their faces elongated, their mouths stretching into grotesque grins filled with sharp teeth. The woman who had welcomed him was no longer human. Her eyes glowed yellow, and her fingers ended in razor-sharp claws. "Come out, Martin," she called, her voice distorted and echoing. "Join us." Terrified, Martin grabbed his keys and bolted from the house. The villagers turned their heads in unison, their glowing eyes locking onto him. He sprinted to his truck, the villagers chasing after him with unnatural speed. Their laughter echoed in the night, high-pitched and chilling. Martin fumbled with the keys as the creatures closed in, their claws scraping against the truck. He managed to start the engine and roared down the narrow trail, the headlights illuminating the monstrous forms chasing him. The truck swerved and skidded as Martin sped through the forest, the path seeming to twist and stretch endlessly. Just as he thought he'd never escape, he had burst out of the trees and onto the main road. When Martin reached the mining camp, he was pale and shaking. The foreman took one look at him and sighed. "You went to the village, didn't you?" Martin nodded, unable to speak. The foreman handed him a bottle of tequila. "Drink, it's the only thing that'll keep the memories from eating you alive. Pray they don't follow you." Martin quit his job and left the mountains, but he could never forget the glowing eyes and twisted smiles of the villagers. Locals say that San Nicolás Perdido still waits in the mountains, luring the curious and the lost, and once you enter, the village never lets you go, at least, not entirely. Some nights, travelers claim to see shadows moving through the forest, glowing eyes watching from the darkness. They say the village devours its visitors, and those who escape leave a piece of themselves behind. Was the contract worth it? Let me know in the comments. Let's continue. Deep in a forbidden, shadowy forest, there was a small village called La Umbria, known for its eerie tales of witchcraft and demons. According to the elders, centuries ago, a witch named Anara made a pact with 3 demons known as the 3 Flames, guardians of the fire of the underworld. This pact granted Anara unimaginable power, but also cursed the entire village to live under her shadow forever. Elias was a young scholar passionate about the occult, who came to La Umbria in search of answers. He had discovered an old diary in an abandoned library that spoke of Anara. The diary described how the witch still wandered the shadows of the forest, waiting for a soul strong enough to unleash her power. It mentioned 3 torches, marking the resting place of the demons, but warned that anyone who approached might lose much more than their life. When Elias arrived in the village, the townsfolk watched him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. In the town square, an elderly woman with a wrinkled face and piercing eyes stopped him. "Are you here to find her?" she asked in a raspy voice. Elias nodded, surprised. "If you follow that path, boy, there's no turning back. The 3 Flames are not guardians, they are destroyers, and Anara does not forgive intruders." Undeterred, Elias made his way into the forest, determined to uncover the truth. The forest seemed alive. Every step Elias took was met with the crackle of branches that sounded like whispers, and the wind carried voices calling his name. After hours of walking, he reached a clearing where 3 torches burned with an intense blue flame. In the center of the circle formed by the torches was a black stone engraved with arcane symbols. Elias felt a presence behind him. When he turned, a figure cloaked in black emerged from the shadows. It was Anara. Her face was youthful, but her eyes seemed to hold centuries of darkness. "I knew you would come," the witch said with a malicious smile. Summoning his courage, Elias replied, "I've come to stop you and break the pact with the 3 Flames." The witch laughed, a sound that echoed like a sinister choir through the forest. "Break the pact. To do that, you would have to face the demons and survive. No mortal has ever done so." Before Ellis could respond, the flames on the torches began to dance and transform into humanoid figures. The three flames took shape. The first was a warrior with a fiery sword, the second a woman shrouded in a mantle of fire, and the third a beastly creature with eyes glowing like embers. "Why have you summoned us, mortal?" they asked in unison, their voices reverberating like thunder. Elias knew he needed to outwit them. The diary he had read revealed that each demon had a weakness tied to its essence. To the warrior, who embodied wrath, Elias proposed a contest of wits instead of strength. Using riddles, he confused the demon until its fiery form began to crumble. To the woman, who symbolized desire, he presented an enchanted mirror that reflected her true nature, an empty spirit consumed by pain. She screamed and dissolved into ashes. Finally, to the beast, the most powerful of the three and a manifestation of fear, Elias reminded it that fear could not exist without a source. Facing it with unwavering bravery, the demon weakened and disappeared into the night. With the three flames defeated, Anara screamed in fury. Her body began to disintegrate, and her eyes glowed with a burning red light. "This is not the end, mortal," she hissed. "The pact cannot be broken so easily." With her final breath, she cast a curse upon Elias, vowing that his soul would never find peace. The witch vanished, leaving behind black smoke and an eerie silence that enveloped the forest. When Elias returned to the village, he noticed a change. The mist that had cloaked Laumbria for centuries had lifted, and the villagers emerged from their homes, thanking him for freeing them from the witch. But Elias knew his victory had come at a cost. Anara's curse would haunt him for the rest of his life. Years later, rumors spread of a young traveler who had defeated a witch and faced demons, but those who encountered him said his eyes were hollow, as though something vital had been torn from within him. On the darkest nights, in the forest where the three flames once burned, some say you can still hear a whisper. The pact is never truly broken. Thank you for staying until the end. If you enjoy these kind of stories, give us a like and don't forget to subscribe. If you have any requests for future stories, let me know in the comments. Thank you.